They're gonna catch my checklist. That's a bad bet.
Welcome back to the Never Fade NFT podcast. I'm your host, Faxx, joined as always by my co-host, GoodMonth ETH. What's up, Good?
Faxx, what's Gucci, boy? It's been a weekend, eh?
Hey, you've been busy, man. I've been seeing you on the timeline. I've been seeing you on the Ethereum blockchain slamming big-time transactions. Boy, let's talk about that for a second.
Hold up. You wearing the Wag Me You jersey? I've never seen it.
Dude, I mentioned Snowfro in the last episode that we were recording. So in the meantime, I got my Wag Me You squiggle jersey. It's fly, man. I got the hat. I just wanted to show some love to Preston, Sports Cheetah, and the team over there at Wag Me United. It sounds like they had a kind of an exciting finish to a game recently. And you know what, dude? Like, frankly, the reason that it's fun is because I'm not in it for money. I bought this NFT for a few $100s. I got this merch, and I get to kind of like enjoy this story of these guys that acquired a soccer team overseas and are trying to turn it around and make it into a championship roster by playing kind of Moneyball style and seeing if they can engineer some wins. It's been rough. I'm not going to lie. They got a lot of FUD. The local fans, I think, want to burn down the squiggle. But, over here, it's kind of a fun concept. So, yeah, I got the merch, wanted to show some love. It bangs, dude. What do you think about the merch?
Dude, I mean, first off, I really hope the local fans are making memes about the squiggle, because that would just proliferate. Like, I hope we get some kind of lore about the uproar of the squiggle. Like, I want to be at a family dinner on Sunday in Crawley Town hearing them talk about the squiggle. That would be a fascinating pod. We should fly out there and get to a Sunday feast at a 4-generation deep, like we're talking grandma, grandpa's in the 100 range, 4-generation deep Crawley Town combo on that squiggle logo. But yeah, on top of that, I'm staying bullish because you're going to walk around where you live with a squiggle on your chest. It looks like a football club jersey. People are going to ask questions. Like, people are going to be like, yo, what club is that? And you're like, oh, let me tell you about Snowfro art blocks, and let me hit you with all this information before we even get to football.
Yo, man, I think what we'll do is we'll invite some of the people involved with managing that team on the show, and we'll get that experience when the time is right. In general, though, like, I know it sounds simple and corny, but I like merch, man. I'm into it, dude. It's like this fandom thing, right? It's like, dude, yeah, hell yeah, give me a hat, give me a jersey. I'll follow along, dude. We're here for entertainment after all, are we not?
Look, golf season's popping off right now. Every March, April time frame, I start looking for the new fit for summer for the golf wear. And I was like, where's the bake drop? Where's my bake merch? Like, haven't had a bake drop in a long time. I'm ready to buy some merch.
Yeah, I'm sure you got boxes of merch up in the crib. But let's talk about that, because you made a pretty interesting trade. It sounds like EB7 helped you to execute it. It involved you trading some Bored Apes that you've been holding for a long time and some doggos for a hoodie punk.
I do want to clarify. I do want to get the record straight, just on record. I traded 3 apes, 3 doggos for a Pudgy Rod.
A Pudgy Rod, yeah. Well, somewhere along the line, somebody gifted you a hoodie punk in this deal. So
that's right.
Can we talk a little bit about the psychology, the reasoning behind why you did that move?
Yeah. You want to go there?
Well, I mean, we're going to be joined on this episode.
It's hard to go there to be honest. It's hard to go there and not it's hard to go there and be approachable.
It's hard to go there and be approachable. I mean, I guess the question is like, is it FUD? Is it FUD that
no.
GoodMonth,
No.
one of the early Bored Ape holders and advocates, Trippy Ape on the timeline is trading apes for Cryptopunk. Is that FUD?
Not at all. Not at all. It's not FUD at all. It's an opportunist situation. Cryptopunk's floor was falling below Bored Ape's floor at a quick rate. I have been hunting Hoodie Punk trait for a long time, and mainly because the community that is around Hoodie Punks, they're diamond-handed OGs. Like, it is not a trait or a group of people for the faint-hearted. Like, they are long-bagged holders. Hoodie Punk is a culture. Hoodie Punk is a community. I haven't even tapped into any of the chats yet, but I'd always been interested in it, you know?
How long were you actually like looking to acquire a Hoodie Punk?
The moment I saw CryptoPunks, the moment I saw the amount of pixels that a hood gets on the JPEG, made complete sense. You look at these pixels of these people and you get this huge hood over a person. It was literally surface area on the canvas of the JPEG. It was a no-brainer to me. They have the most pixels, period. Like, that was easy.
You've talked about in the past about traits, building kind of this persona of a collector and building these sub-communities. Like, is the Hoodie Punk the most kind of grail trait in NFTs as we know it today?
It's not the most grail trait. I think the most grail trait is an alien punk. I think the second most grail trait is a ape punk. I think a gold ape and a trippy ape go in front of a zombie punk, if not even. I think those are grail traits. I think the hoodie trait is the most connected community surrounded by a trait of value. You have the pimp coats of apes. You have the hip hop jackets of apes. You have these niche traits. I'm not going to say, I'm not here to start, Hoodie Punk turf wars. I'm just saying that, like, watch the bake floor dip, watch the hip hop trait capitulate, watch the pimp coat trait capitulate, watch the Cryptopunk floor dip, watch the hoodie trait be unfazed. And
That's
you're looking at 259 hoodie punks. 259 is enough to have a community. The 7 alien punks and the 24, 25 something 8 punks, like, that's not big enough.
Why do you think it is that when the floors dip, a pimp coat ape trait will dip, but a hoodie punk won't dip as much?
Great question. I think in 21, PFPs were given this role of identity, and the identity was this subjective matter that was stuffed in a concept. The concept in 21 was community. And today in 23, we've really washed out a lot of the community concept that gave these PFPs identity. So I think we're at this point in time right now where communities are fragmented. I don't own a pimp coat with in the Bored Ape collection, so I don't know if they have a pop-in chat. But I can tell you, when I look at the market, pimp coats are trading. They're moving. They're changing hands. They're not going, pimp coat to pimp coat. HipHop Apes, which I had one, and I'm a part of that chat. It's not gated. I love that chat. They don't kick people out, but it's transient. Hoodie punks are not transient. I have DM'd most hoodie punk owners to make trades. Every single trade that I've tried to make, bad deal for me. They don't let up. I mean, I'd been asked like for 6, 7 apes, you know, maybe if my trippy was included with a handful of other apes. Like, these are hard holders. So
Yeah.
EB7 puts his hoodie punk up on Twitter, wanting to get back in apes, ready to feel something. I love EB7. I got a lot of love for EB7. I've been working on a deal, like a theoretical deal with him for years. And I was like, there's one person that I want to trade apes to get a hoodie punk. It's EB7. Why? Because I know EB7 is going to take care of the apes. I know EB7 is going to bring Spark back to the apes. So to your question, is this FUD on apes? Hell no. This is getting to the yacht of the boats in the Yuga ecosystem. That's all. Just a different yacht.
Yeah, and I think you like to vault grails, and you didn't stop there. There was a 41 check floor sweep that hit the chain, and that followed with the accumulation of enough checks from Jack Butcher's visualized value for you to burn down on day 69 to a single pink check. Within 24 hours of bagging your hoodie punk, you minted a single check. Why, Good? Why?
Yeah, let's go into this on the outro. Let's bring Bored G in, and let's break this down on the outro.
Fair enough. We have Bored Ape G from the ApeCoin Special Council. He's joining us. He's been on the show before. We picked his brain going into the ApeCoin Special Council election that happened earlier this year, and now we're bringing him in to get a follow-up on that, see where things are at with the ApeCoin Council, the Yuga ecosystem. We're going to chat about that, and then we're going to circle back to this question of the single check with GoodMonth ETH. So let's go ahead and bring in Bored Ape G now.
Woo!
Hey guys.
Let's go.
Oh man, what a whirlwind. What a fucking whirlwind. I'm sorry, I don't know if I'm supposed to swear on your podcast.
That's all. Yeah, no, we prefer it.
Yo.
We prefer it. Let me ask you, first of all, you are an HipHop Ape. You know, that's your PFP. We were just talking about how traits in some of these collections, like apes and punks, are kind of create these verticals for sub-communities to get together. Is that how you and GoodMonth ETH met?
Yeah, man, that is exactly how, and that HipHop Ape crew has been solid. Of course, even GoodMonth himself recently let go of that hip hop, but it's definitely it's by number one Web3 crew. It's just the classy guys that have been in there and that have come over the years. It's just fantastic, and really a lot of builders, and GoodMonth's at the top of that list.
Yeah, and this is I'm going to call this a controversy because we have you on here to talk about the ApeCoin Council. You're a long-time Yuga Bored Ape holder. Obviously, GoodMonth is as well, and he's traded 3 apes and 3 doggos for a hoodie Cryptopunk. What do you think about that? Let's get your takeaways on this.
Fact check. It was 3 apes, 3 doggos for a Pudgy Rod. That was the trade.
Rod, bro.
The Pudgy Rod. It was the legendary rod.
Going down bad on the Penguin Rare sweep, dude.
Luca Nets come at us.
No shade to Luca, but you should have hit the D gods on that sweep, son. Let's go. Easy,
Luca,
dude.
come
Easy
get
game.
your boy. Come get your boy right now.
Come on. Yeah, but what are your thoughts on that trade?
You must have always wanted a hoodie punk. That's why you did it. Right?
Yeah.
I know a couple of those apes were, long-term hold, really, I didn't expect you were going to sell it but trading, that's a different story. So that was, you really wanted a hoodie punk.
Yeah. I mean, you ever want to figure out what it's like to clone yourself, hold an ape for 2 years, and then have that ape come into our hip hop chat with that PFP and start agreeing with you when you're in the chat? Greg, this morning when I was talking about Oniforce, Greg is agreeing with me. I felt like I was ChatGPTing myself.
Dude, I was looking at that. I was
experience.
like, am I looking at 2 good months right now? I was looking at chat this morning. I was very confused.
I know. It's hard to get over. And I want to comment on it every time, but also like Greg just, put a bag out to get it. So I understand the perception of like, you can't say like, oh, I feel like I'm talking to myself. He's like, dude, I own this now. But yeah, I mean, it was hard. To be dead honest with you, that chat group, the hip hop trait, it kept me holding on to that ape way longer. And so I really understood the value of like trait-based communities, you know what I mean? And that's why Hoodie Punk, I've just always kind of been after it. We talked about it a little bit in the intro, but it's just been a trait/community that I've always kind of seen as a long hold. I'll get back and I'll get a HipHop Ape back. But yours is designed for Drake. We all know that. That's Loverboy eyes. It's certified Loverboy is written all over your ape. That's designed for Drake. So I expect you to off that to Drake one day.
Yeah, I tweeted him back in the bull run. I was like, Drake, when you buying my HipHop Ape?
If y'all haven't seen Bored Ape G's ape, like we'll throw it up in the pod. It's a masterpiece. Gray fur, gray background, hip hop jacket, heart-shaped eyes. Like it is a masterpiece.
Thanks, guys.
These guys are absolute lovers of apes and ape traits. You love to see it. That hasn't changed a bit. Make no doubt about that. So, Bored Ape G, last time we had you on the show, it was ahead of the ApeCoin Special Council election, which that, was completed. And of course, you're one of the key members of that council now. So can you walk us through a little bit of kind of what's happened since then in your perspective here?
Yeah, and of course, before we dive into that, I got to throw my flowers at you guys again. I really appreciate you having been on the show. Obviously, it was everything that was part of that campaign. You guys were a key part of it to get me elected eventually. Get that message out, and I think you really, how I ended up getting elected on was the message resonated, and it really took. I think at some point people realized like I was an underdog, and it came out because. Like the podcast, like the post that I did, it got out. The message was there, the information was there, and you guys were really a key piece of my campaign to get me elected. So I really appreciate it.
Well, I think the thing really, to be honest, was what woke us up was the pod to you. To like, I knew about you, we knew you were running, but on the pod, if you remember, that's when we started digging into like contributions, like. In the designated space to run your campaign within the time window, who is putting in work? And I've always kind of fancied the idea of interviewing for a job. Like I always think that when people are interviewing for a job, like that should be your 150% sparkle. Like you're not going to bring that 150% every day, but that interview needs to be like up and to the right and like a wild experience to be the 90% to 110% producer day in and day out. It was on that pod where we went into the discourse and we saw like all these people are running, there's people at the top, and there's not a lot of contributions in this time and space. And I think that was really hard for people to grok. Like I think a lot of people were like, wait, don't judge me on this window of campaigning. Judge me on my past. But I think this was a very big win for Web3. This election was a very big win for proof of work because it took a while, like 2 weeks, I feel like. Maybe it was only a week. It took a while for the ship to turn, but we saw it. The ship slowly turned to line up and point at people who are putting in proof of work for the campaign in this time and space of this meta. Like that's where everyone is going to allocate the judgment. It was probably one of the best experiences of governance in Web3 that I've ever experienced. What did you feel from your end? Yeah,
it'll be living through it. Right? It's definitely the biggest like kind of election campaign like I've ever run. Not that I've been in politics. I ran like student council back in school. Every time I ran against like it was always like the hottest girls in class, and I lost. So I knew like that was my experience in the past. So this one had 3 shots at it, right? So I got in. But it was like, so being in it, yeah, it was a grind. But I think it was just believing it in that message that for myself that hey, I'm gonna put my best foot forward, and that's it. If at least if I didn't get in, I knew I did my best to show that I can help contribute. Like where my talents are suited. Which I thought really was being on the council. And that's it. It's when you're in it, it's just so hard. When I started, I was like round 1, I was out of it, right? Like I was like bottom 8. But slowly, you just see the numbers slowly turning, and it's really because of that education. And the DAO is still young, so it has been a little bit of time for the community to understand like what the position entails, right? Because even though people turned their attention to the DAO, not many people were really going onto the website and figure out, hey, what does the council do? What does the board do? Right. And then trying to see like who's applying, and you realize, and I was always pushing the message, you're trying to elect a team, right? Like you want to make sure there's complementary skill sets if we're trying to achieve, administering the vision of the DAO, which is the point of the board. And so I think eventually, like everything, just like you guys were helping out with that message, that's how we started seeing the tide turn and really going focus as the community got more sophisticated, I think, and understanding that like the ApeCoin DAO really is different than like, let's say, the Bored Ape Yacht Club, right? And there's just different priorities and different expectations for like, let's say, the BAYC Council versus the ApeCoin Council. And once that education piece started to go through and disseminate to the community, I think we started seeing that the tides turn to like, okay, we want to make sure we elect a good like 3 people that work well together to achieve to help achieve what we're gonna accomplish or we need to do here on ApeCoin Council with Yacht and Alexis.
Yeah, and we've seen a lot of people recently in discussions we've had about DAOs all kind of arrive at this conclusion that DAOs are too restrictive and it's hard to kind of get things moving forward. And we noticed that some of the AIPs that are actually active right now are kind of surrounding governance in respect to like moderation of these AIPs. It seems like you guys think, or whoever's proposing these thinks, that it would be really helpful for there to be somebody designated to kind of like narrate the AIPs through the process and kind of help moderate that. Like, can you shed any light on those AIPs that are currently existing regarding governance and moderation of AIPs and kind of why that's popping up and where you think that's heading?
Yeah, so as of right now, the voting will end tomorrow. There's this AIP for AP 239, which is establishing working group guidelines, and then there's like a governance working group. So typical for most DAOs that are mature, they create what these things are called working groups, which decentralizes work to specific like work streams, like within those working groups. So it just allows, for one example, that not every AIP needs to potentially go to a DAO-wide vote, right? We're trying to decentralize the work because at this point, let's say a request for a $10,000 AIP is going to go through the same process as $5 million AIP. So just think about the inefficiencies with that, right? And the challenges if you're an author or a builder, that when you're trying to request like $10,000 versus somebody who's trying to request like 5 million, and you're going through the same process. So the idea with working groups is that you can push like, depends on what the DAO approves, right? Push certain functions down to these working groups, and they could go make those decisions more independently. And at least an author can go to that working group. And if it doesn't fit like their vision, they could still go toward the DAO-wide vote if they want. Like there's still that process, but at least it streamlines, things that are like urgent in nature potentially. Which, let's say if it's a small grant request for like $5,000, do you really want to be going through this like multi-week process with the whole DAO voting versus potentially going to a working group that has that budget to approve a $5,000 spend at like next week's conference or something like that, right? So that's what the working group, the spirit of it is supposed to be. And that AIP 239 that's up today is the first real working group guideline that's looking to establish the first working group, which is a governance working group.
Got it. Thanks for sharing. So from what you've seen so far since you've been on the board, what's like one of the biggest disappointments in terms of maybe the way the community has responded to something that you thought would have been in the best interest of the ApeCoin DAO? Do you have anything in mind that you can say, gosh, like I saw this and there was maybe some misalignment and maybe people didn't fully understand the upside or anything like that?
You know what? On the board, we're very objective, right? So we definitely are here to just serve the vision of the community. But even like given that in mind, we just haven't even got to that point where there has been enough AIPs to go through that you would feel like, oh, potentially there's something out there that you're super disappointed about. I mean, this working group guideline that's up for vote right now is the first of that working group proposal. And one, just because this goes up, somebody else could put up another working group proposal, right? And this is just the first of it. So I'm just excited to see that there's the DAO is moving towards this further decentralization, and a working group structure is going to be important to that. And we'll just see how this vote goes. I know it's looking pretty good right now in favor, and I think for me generally, whether it's this AIP or another, the spirit of further decentralization is always going to be something that I'm rooting for. So I'm glad that this proposal has come up there, and it's looking like there's a good chance it might pass. And if it doesn't, I know there's a lot of people in the community that are ready to put up another proposal as well.
Yeah, and to break down working groups a little bit, am I correct in thinking they're like, tiger teams or like teams that have work streams that are attached to them? So people are actually kind of filling roles around a topic, almost like a role within a department at a centralized company. Is that fair to think about it like that?
Exactly, right. But you're throwing in the decentralized nature of it once you're in there. But ideally, let's say you had 5 different working groups, you would have one DAO vote that splits up their budget, right? And as long as in those working groups they have their charters and they have the way that they're going to handle their budget, then you don't have to go through 5 different DAO votes, right? And this is common in other DAOs, right? They'll set up seasons. Here's the budget. I think for us as an ApeCoin DAO, we're still relatively young, so there's like a lot of contention within people because we just don't know yet as a DAO what is how do we go through these seasons? How do we go through budgeting? But that's just the nature of decentralized governance. You have to go through a bunch of contentious votes to figure out who you are, what's your identity as a DAO. And then once we figure it out, we're the beauty about it too, I'm trying to get this message out to people. Just because it might not be perfect, but that's okay. Even the way that ApeCoin DAO is structured, the framework around it is you could always put up another proposal, right? If there's something competing, it's in our governance documents that within 3 months, you could go and you could make it a proposal to go against another proposal that was passed, or you could just do your own proposal. There's nothing stopping you. So I think a lot of times I'd like to encourage the community to kind of think that hey, you just want to get work done. If it's you guys understand startups. If it's a reversible decision, don't get too caught up on it, right? It's better done than perfect, because at the end of the day, there are mechanisms in place here to fix it if there's something really egregiously bad. But at this point, I really don't think that we're at that point. There's not much that you can propose to the DAO that's irreversible.
Yeah, I mean, and I can echo that just from a building standpoint in the startup world is product market fit. The amount of companies that bring ideas to product and it doesn't have product market fit, they go back to the drawing board to tweak a couple features, a lot of messaging, and try it again, right? It's you don't know really if you have product market fit until you validate it. And then the only way to validate it is give it a shot, see how it takes, and get out there. And I think, a lot of startups that go through accelerators, they get 6 months of that. Every month they're pitching their product and their messaging, and it's getting torn down and rebuilt, torn down and rebuilt. So, I mean, it sounds a lot like that. You put an AIP out there, if it gets torn down, you take the comments, you take the feedback, you reach out to people to get their perspective, you reshape, and you try again.
Right, and those AIPs, when people have rejected their AIPs, it's really like maybe it's not that it's a full rejection. It's like maybe it's just not yet. Like you just said, GoodMonth. Like just go back to the drawing board, iterate, and resubmit it. Right? It's just the timing of the DAO just might not be correct at this time.
Oh yeah. I mean, just for anyone out there that's trying to craft AIPs or have been shot down an AIP, like I'm telling you, like getting told no early is a blessing. You know, if you're going to raise money through venture capitalists, like the amount of time you're going to get told no because it doesn't fit their thesis, because they didn't get your messaging, because they have other portcos that compete, because they're not investing in this space anymore. Like it's just going to make you stronger. So, man, that it inspires me to. I need to pop in there and just give people pats on the back if they don't pass. You know, we got to keep the passion there.
Right, and then I get pings all the time too, and I just try to encourage people. But also, like I've learned from my own like startup failures that but I've learned one thing: is fail fast. Like I want to know, like if the DAO wants something, like people are like, should I put this up? Yeah, go put it up. I want you to like. For me, I want to know if there's an idea. It's like you find out there's just no some such thing as perfect. And that's something I had to learn myself over time. It's just better to learn that, you really like you test your assumptions and fail early.
Yeah. We just recorded a podcast with Bored Elon, one of the biggest Pepin holders really into gaming, and we threw up one of Jack Butcher's diagrams that's building versus betting. Hazy, we're going to have to throw it up on this one too. It's going to be a theme. We're going to have to remind people. It's going to be the diagram of the space. It's one of the most beautiful ones. Is like it's a bar chart, and the bar chart's trending up, and underneath it says building, and then it's a bar chart, and it's spiked up, and it's below the x-axis, and a little one up, and below the x-axis spiked up, and then it says betting. And this is a message I think I want to send to AIP creators. Like if you're gonna go fail fast. That's on the left. That's AIPs failing, and you slowly start to see incremental wins. If you think your AIP is going to be a hot butter or if you think your AIP is going to be a hot knife through butter, that's that betting diagram on the right, and that's a lot of ups and downs. So you want to fit that building mode, right?
Man, I love that. I love that comparison, those charts.
Yeah, they hit hard. And so talk to me a little bit about like these working groups. Before you got on board, and before everyone else got on board alongside of you, I can say it, you can't say it. The DAO was a mess. Like it was an absolute mess. And the reason why it was a mess is because you had all the opinionators coming in, and it was like everyone was a stakeholder, right? Everybody had a better take, and they were all V1.1ing. And one of the examples, before you and all the others that got on board in this recent election, one of the biggest examples was the marketplace fight. Honestly, the ApeCoin marketplace debate kind of created Blur, like kind of created the marketplace wars between OpenSea, LooksRare, Blur. And it was wild to see because someone was like, hey, we should have a marketplace to capture the spend and use ApeCoin. And then it was like, we need a marketplace that does XYZ. And everyone was like V1.xing on the original idea. But now we have these working groups, which sounds like we have appointed stakeholders. How do you think that impacts decision-making in the ideation stage of an AIP?
I think in that sense, just given also what current builders have gone through, it should really make things more efficient and more welcoming for these builders, right? Because there's a lot of hesitation right now for people. And I had a call the other day with a friend of mine that was recommended by a friend of mine, and he's a builder, and he's really put off right now, like putting up AIPs, because he's just worried about the perception for his business, and it's just not. I was like, who can I really forward him to? And of course we have the working group zero folks, but they're not there yet. Like they're not there to hold their hand, right? And that's all he was asking for. Like who's there that I can rely on to go ask a question, and we're just not there yet. Like there's no official welcoming committee to make people and authors really feel like they can sit down with them and help direct them. So I do think if we can get some sort of working group, version 1, right? That's the plan here. It should be able to allow these builders to be more comfortable at least learning about the process, because it is a little bit daunting if you're really not in it every day. Because I really don't think it's actually daunting, but if you understand what's happening, getting that perspective of someone new coming in and all they hear is people yelling on Twitter Spaces. I don't know if you guys heard the last couple of AIPs that went up. A couple of very opinionated community members just like ripping apart some authors, right? And it's unfortunate, but but like hearing the perspective of somebody that's like trying to come in and build for the community, and like they told me that, I'm like, yeah, you know what? That's a little bit rough. I could see that perspective, so that it really for me solidified the idea that we do need some sort of working group structure to kind of mitigate this risk. Like this is a builder who wants to help the DAO, and they just don't want to be like ripped apart before they even step in at the starting line.
Yeah, Twitter Spaces get out of pocket real quick in general, and
of course
and,
you know
everything related to Twitter.
Faxx, was that you? Was that actually you yelling on the AIP Twitter Space?
Dude, if I'm on Twitter Spaces, I'm fucking yelling at somebody.
Faxx is yelling at somebody.
No, but like that's just how Twitter Spaces are, and I can see what you mean. Like if somebody is not familiar with like what's going on in Twitter Spaces and what's going on in the engagement farming world of NFT Twitter, and they're like, oh, I have a great idea that I think it makes a lot of sense, it aligns with the interests of the ApeCoin DAO and so forth, and they go to put up this idea, and then they just are blown back by all this like wild fun that they weren't prepared for. If there was a working group to kind of like help walk them through the process and probably like, address some of those things that in the past have caused contention on some of the proposals and kind of put them in a better position. So is that kind of the idea here?
I think that's one. Definitely that's one. All right. Yeah. And it really just highlights that for me, that conversation I had yesterday, that it is really intimidating, as Hazy V just put here, or that it's really intimidating. Yeah, and getting that perspective from, imagine you're just a builder who's not into this like space, and you have a legitimate product, you want to help the community, and you're just the first thing you do is you come in and like you just hear someone ripping apart another business, like that's, and then you're not getting help from anyone in the community to go like ideate on your idea and how it can help benefit the DAO. So yeah, it's a good reminder that we still have a long way to go, and we really need to be cognizant that not everyone understands like people are just fucking around potentially, or there's personalities that's not a reflection of the rest of the DAO, but that exists, and we just need to take steps, and hopefully that the working groups are going to be able to help us improve that process from the beginning.
Yeah, and it is tough. Like you really do kind of have to come at this space with a little bit of media training, a little bit of like if you've been on stage at a conference doing a keynote, or you've been on stage at a conference doing a panel, then you probably have the chops to handle things coming at you, but still you're not exposed to like shit posters and hecklers. And I think one thing that people need to keep in mind is that ideas are truly a dime a dozen. Like, really, they are not a diamond in the rough. Ideas are pretty easy to have. Frameworks to put around those ideas are a little bit more difficult, but still, ideating doesn't have a high barrier like execution does. And I think like if people are bringing ideas and shit posters are ripping them apart, sometimes it just takes a lot of time to body them, right? Body the shit poster and just ask the shit poster questions. Help that shit poster further refine your idea. And by the way, I always feel like I have to clarify this. Shit posting sounds negative. It's not negative. It's like, there's like a spectrum of shit posting and grifter, and we all fall somewhere in the middle, and we move left and right. So shit posting is a part of the space for those that need the definition.
For good, shit posting is a term of endearment for GoodMonth. But I will comment that, like, we have also discussed the fact that, like, not caring is one of the big barriers that DAOs face, right? Is people not being, that interested. So maybe like swinging the other way and people getting especially passionate about it, is probably a net positive. And then kind of figuring out how to, like, put some guardrails on these things to keep them respectful and productive is kind of where this could go from here. So, I mean, do you feel like in the last couple of months, Bored Ape G, that the DAO and the conversations around the DAO have become kind of more or less empowering and interesting and engaging?
Well, actually, this is a good segue, because I wanted to ping you guys and ask you, like, what are your, like, give it to me straight, like, what are your thoughts with the DAO? It's only been a few months. It's like, the new term. But I want to know what you guys think of the DAO and what we could be doing better. Like, what's your perspective?
I think that currently the process by which it works, it's becoming more engaging, and that's, I think, the direction that it should go in. I think given the size of the funds in this DAO, given the size of the treasury, especially in this like macro environment, it's kind of like absurd, and it's on the back of this kind of whole like memetic experience of like apes and mutants and all of this stuff. So, my thing is, like, as much as possible to turn like the ApeCoin DAO proposal process and approval process into programming, into entertainment, into, like, something that is people can tune into, people who are stakeholders or curious, like, can get there, kind of can stay abreast of what's happening, and also catch some kind of like entertainment and learn more about who are the people, who are the characters in the story and all this stuff. And so there was one AIP that I think kind of, there was a couple, there was like the Damn Show and Live Game Show, which was like a content approach here with distributing information about ApeCoin. And then there was another one about moderating. So I kind of see these things like going in that direction. Like, that's my main input, coming from perspective where I do see like the impact of creating focused content and creating like content that people can cut their teeth into. Like, that's my, idea, is just generally to like put this in the framework of some interesting programming that's consistent and also entertaining.
No, that I think that's fully aligned with what I think what's, with that, like with BAYC, right? We got a vibe there. And I think with ApeCoin, it's like we're still figuring out, like, what is the culture? We're supposed to be, culture's pushing, or we're pushing culture to the metaverse. Like, that's our vision, right? With ApeCoin now. But like, I think we're still lacking a little bit of like, what is the culture of ApeCoin, and like that programming, like what's our vibe? I think that is directionally, I completely agree. That's something I've been thinking about a lot too. So the fact that like that's like your first thing, your perspective, it really like resonates with me.
Yeah, and to plus one that, I mean, I think every builder needs a Faxx type of personality on their team, because what he just described is exactly what he does with me all the time. it's like I'll read a white paper or I'll see a post from a builder or a founder, and I'll kind of like, grok the framework and understand where they're going in the year on the roadmap. And Faxx will be like, dude, tell me what this means. Like, tell me what they're doing right now, And I'll be like, well, they're not doing anything right now. They're building for this in the future. And it makes sense to me. But he's like, people aren't going to listen to this. People aren't going to buy this. People aren't going to understand this. People aren't going to grok this. And it's a phenomenal perspective to have, because, that type of perspective is like, I need to know, I need to get information in snippets, and I need to know what that information means, and I need to be able to take action, or I need to be able to, take note of how I can take action moving forward. And I think, taking a big roadmap and being able to have your event be succinct like that is extremely valuable to every business. And I think it definitely applies to the DAO. From my perspective, first off, the election, if the board doesn't drive any change beyond this point, a huge win that's come out of it is that the Twitter is not the town square for the politics on the DAO, which is huge, because before this board election, Twitter was the town square of politics for the DAO, which was always diluted. Every time someone tweets their opinion and then someone riffs off that opinion and then someone riffs off that opinion, you're now 16 degrees away from the AIP itself. It's like getting your pamphlet to vote, measure 28.6, reading through the whole pamphlet and hearing one person's take on it at the Starbucks, and then turning into a echo chamber of debate at Starbucks, and not a single person has read the full measure. They just heard from someone who read the measure, right? Does that make sense? So it's insular to Discord, to the snapshot voting page, to where the AIPs are on the discourse. And to Faxx's point, that's it needs to be extracted at a higher level to understand what's going on there in an easier way. And I know the DAO knows that. But also the fact that it's insular does mean that there are people that understand the AIPs at a very fundamental level, and it's not amplifying in kind of a misinformation type manner. So I just want to give you all kudos on that. I think that's a huge win. The next step is extracting it so that it can hit the masses, so that they can come in to vote and get the right information. That's a hard nut to crack, but I think you're in position to do it. The big take for me on the DAO, like if I were to build on it, like where could we go next, is builders are really busy. It's like, it pains me that I'm not active in the working group every day. And I want to be. And I need to do some organization on my side. When people say I don't have time for X, it literally means I'm not organized to prioritize X. That's what it means. And so I take that on myself. I'm not organized enough in Discord to be able to prioritize the working group. And so my gut reaction is like, well, if we could have Slack integrations to internal companies where, a working group post or like a digest or the AIP post can come through, the GoodMonth Labs Slack, like that's something I can help build. I can build a Slack integration webhook for that Discord so that builders can be integrated. And small things like that, that's what I'm thinking is like that next kind of really interoperable play of being able to pipe into builders' Slacks, Discords, or their workspace so that they can lend their hyper efficient skills. I look at someone like OX Designer. If any of y'all know who that is, OX Designer puts design implementations out there of things that could be done better. He'll say like Cryptopunk trading on Twitter and what it would look like and things like that. Like having OX Designer pop in on someone who has an AIP product idea, and OX Designer being able to be like, oh, let me just take 2 hours and go cook on this real quick. Now OX Designer can give this AIP submission some visual attention, and that's a vibe.
Man, I love it. Yeah, I think getting this is where I'm excited to, once we have these work groups, because you guys are busy as builders, and I think that the broader voting DAO like doesn't always understand that, right? Like, I think getting this working group, whatever working group structure, whether it's this one that passes or another one, that you could give that feedback as a builder to somebody that's going to be able to act on it. And I think that's what we're missing. And so I'm really excited that we could get that, because we got to make good use of your guys' time and making sure that if you're putting effort in, that you don't have to rely on a DAO-wide vote to go get like a little bit of funding to go do something everybody agrees that the DAO should do, or like the majority of people do. So I'm hoping that in the near future you'll be able to do that and have that opportunity to working group should be like working on Slack and pull that into other builders at Slack group, so they can just efficiently look through that every week and see what's going on with the DAO.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I've learned a lot about what's going on and kind of the mindset of the ApeCoin Special Council at the moment. So we really appreciate your takes, Bored Ape G. I'm hoping kind of every so often we can revisit, and by doing so, we will have captured kind of the progress of some of these efforts that you, the team, and the community are making. Before we do wrap this up, do you have any other kind of like key messages or final words that you wanted to share here today, Bored Ape G?
Yeah. Thank you again for the opportunity and what you guys have done for the DAO in our space. And coming up again, we do have the election for 2 more special council seats. So I think it's really important for people to get involved again in trying to educate themselves and in electing 2 more. This wraps up finally taking away the 5 appointed seats, right? There'll be 5 community members. So these 2 are going to really be important. So I would encourage the DAO members to go get involved and learn about the process. And now, especially with this working groups, what's coming down, there's a lot to do with the DAO. So the message stays the same.
When is the election exactly?
The new term will start July 1st. So but the election process is going to start next month. Which means people are starting a campaign, right? And we'll have the exact dates of when KYC has to be done and the applications, but it is going to start next month.
And how many seats will be elected?
2.
2 more. Okay, so we have 2 more seats in May and June. It sounds like this campaign is going to be going on to be finalized for this new term that's going to start on July 1st. So for everybody listening, this is your opportunity to get on the campaign trail and make an impact on the ApeCoin DAO at the highest level. So definitely appreciate that. And we appreciate you, Bored Ape G, for coming on the show. We'll see you on the timeline. Hopefully you guys don't kick GoodMonth out of the HipHop Ape channel for now. But love to see it, man. Thanks again for joining.
Thanks again, guys.
Thank you, man.
Good. We had Bored Ape G back in the studio, and he was keeping us abreast of what's going on with the ApeCoin DAO. Look, man, I think things are moving in the right direction here. I think that people are starting to understand better how to function as a DAO, and I think people like Bored Ape G are making that a reality. What do you think about that?
Yeah. Big takeaway for me in this episode is that the rails of DAOs are being set. When you look at what DAOs were in 21, when financial speculation was through the roof, they were a mess. They were woefully organized. And it takes a bear market to sort them out. Like, the ApeCoin DAO is just now at the point of being able to get very small wins across the board. And I think it's important to tune in. And in fact, I think this podcast has inspired us to spearhead an AIP in a way we can help.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that people who are involved with the DAO now I think they're feeling more comfortable with how it works, and maybe understanding that, if everything just gets basically voted down, then we're just wasting time. Like, we need to F around and find out on some of these proposals, especially if the ask is reasonable. So yeah, I'm looking forward to, trying to put forward something of value as well, a proposal that is going to drive some education and knowledge and engagement towards the voting mechanism and the AIPs. So before we wrap this up,
Also, one other point on ApeCoin DAO is I think people forget it's not Yuga Labs. It's a whole separate entity. So if you want to help proliferate the unification of spend and the utility of ApeCoin into a project, like you can easily get involved. There isn't a lot of money in the system right now outside of these treasuries. So if you're building something and you want to incorporate ApeCoin and you have distribution, it's almost a no-brainer to go in there and start, getting involved. I think in 2 years from now, we're going to see all these spidering network effects of people that are building around ApeCoin. But I think there's a big misconception right now. People think that ApeCoin is Yuga Labs and you have to be, a Bored Ape Yacht Club lover or a Cryptopunk holder to be involved in the ApeCoin DAO. And that just happens to be who's in there now with their PFPs. You could walk in there with a Doodles PFP and you could write a very convincing AIP that helps ApeCoin DAO progress its reach in the Doodles community if you have distribution. So
yeah, and in reality, you only need one ApeCoin to vote. And so I think that like the narrative up to this point has kind of been a little skeptical of DAOs and people thinking that they don't really work as intended. And I think maybe it's the tide is turning now and we're going to start to see things click and fall into place. And I'm hopeful for that and hoping that we can be a part of that. But before we let you go here, I wanted to ask you some questions here about your recent NFT buying spree. Now, we talked about the hoodie punk at the beginning of the show, the Grail hoodie. Somehow there's a Pudgy Rod involved in this deal.
Yeah, bagged for a Pudgy Rod. Shout out Luca Nets.
So earlier in the episode, we talked about the hoodie punk. You vaulted this Grail, which is beautiful to see. I think everybody in the NFT ecosystem has respect for the hoodie punk. I think that is undoubtedly one of the grails in our ecosystem. And then your next order of business was to go on a check buying spree. And I had the pleasure of watching you burn those checks down to a single pink check. So now you are a holder of a single check. Good. What does that mean to you? How does that feel? And why did you decide to make that move?
Yeah, I mean, it was a very subjective experience burning down to a single check. Like, it was the most personal experience I've ever had in creating a NFT or burning and minting an NFT. I think that, the timing was right within the market to get the original checks to go burn down. The group of people that have a single check, I kind of see them as a Grail collector community, much like a hoodie punk, much like Grail apes. Also, I think like I'd been hunting the hoodie punk for so long that you start to realize, it's not about the aesthetics of what the hoodie punk is. You could chop it up to whatever you want. You could say like, oh, it's got nerd glasses. It's got this type of beard or this type of chain. And yeah, you can go ahead and say, XYZ. At the end of the day, a hoodie punk is a hoodie punk. And I identified with the hoodie more than I identified with whatever was on the face, buck tooth, spotted skin, widow's peak. I don't even think widow's peak shows in a hoodie trait because it's over the head. Earring that doesn't show in the hoodie punk, but it is a metadata trait. necklace, sunglasses, whatever it is, I didn't care. I wanted the hood. And so I was kind of thinking like, what could I put over the face that I vibed with? And the first thing that came to mind was a check. A single check over the face of a hooded punk, I thought was a journey and an endeavor that I wanted to go on. And so that was the motivation, you know. I'd been motivated to get a hoodie punk for 2 months. I wasn't going to overpay for it. Now that I got one, the minute I got one, you know, the next day was day 69 of checks, and it was the Opepin rarity assignment. So I had double incentive. I had day 69 burn provenance. I had Opepin rarity assignment incentivization, and the fact that I had just gotten a hoodie punk 24 hours prior means I could smack that check right on its face. And I'm going to update my PFP to that.
So what I'm hearing here is that you wanted to put a single check in place of the face of the hoodie punk and make your own custom grail PFP. I love to hear it. And also economically, the timing of sweeping a bunch of checks and burning them down to a single check was advantageous too. And to your point about this like single check holder community, you know, I definitely think it kind of inspired this idea of, you know, we probably need to speak to some of these single check holders on the podcast and see what, you know, where they're coming from and learn more about them. And like, this is kind of a whole nother like networking opportunity to go alongside with a lot of what we hope to do here in participating and kind of helping build alongside Jack in this kind of like open source checked Opepin community that's coming together here. So I love to hear it. Thanks for sharing. With that, that wraps up another episode of Never Fade, the NFT podcast. Follow me on Twitter at Faxx_ETH. Follow GoodMonth ETH. Look out for that hoodie punk with the check face. You're not going to be able to miss it. To our producer, Hazy B at Hazel B Jordan on Twitter. This is the NFT podcast. Never Fade. Follow us, subscribe, comment. We appreciate your feedback. Thanks for tuning in. See you next time.
Ciao! That's a bad bet if the bag's checkless. About to burn back to back, flipping not cheap when that Jenny duh hits. That's the race to 250 in the world and you chose to sleep. That's a bad bet if you wake up checkless. No more people without bags, yet they need status. Running head first with the VVcheck thirst. Never heard of a hearse, but they connecting the dots.